Hello, this is Kellen again from the Make Solution Engineering team. And for this lesson, we're going to go step by step in building advanced error handling within the scenario with nested error handling depending on what the error is that happens within the scenario. So with this scenario here, it is very straightforward. We're watching emails. Depending on who sends the email, we're creating a folder dynamically based off sender name, and then we're uploading the file that was attached to the email to that created folder. So if I go ahead and select an email to process, it will run through successfully, creating a folder dynamically with the sender name and uploading the file that was attached. We should see all green here. So good. Everything works out properly. Now, if another email came in from the same sender, we might run into an error when we go to create that folder. So if an email comes in from the same sender and we run this, now all of a sudden we get an error with creating the folder. Typically, this would be a duplicate data error where you can't create an object with the same name or same unique ID. With Dropbox, it's returning a 409 path conflict folder within the error message for a runtime error. So with this type of error, what we can do is use a resume error handler. So we can add an error handler here and go to resume. And from here, we can add in other modules in between the create a folder module and the resume module to get updated information that we can then map into this flow control here. And what a resume handler does is once you grab more information and it hits this resume, the execution will go up to where it errored out, skip that, use the information to then upload the file. So from here, what we'll need to do is we're going to add in a list files module between the create a folder and resume so that we can list all of our folders and find the folder that matches that sender name. So we can right click on the route here, add a module, go to Dropbox, and we can go to list all files or subfolders in a folder. What we're looking for here is we're looking for folders, and we can keep this as nothing and increase the limit to whatever you would like here. So from here, we're going to need to make sure that we set up a filter because right on this module, we're listing all the files, but we only want the file to pass through that matches the sender name. So we can say here, sender name, and the condition can be the name that we find here is equal to the sender name that comes within the email. So we can go ahead and hit OK here. The last step with this resume module is we're going to go into the resume and map in the information that we just found with the list all files and subfolders in a folder. So we do the name, the ID, the path lower, and the path display. And that's it. So once we go ahead and configure that, we can go back, select the first email, and we can reprocess that email and we'll see that this will run successfully now. So I'll grab this email with the CSV, run it. An error will occur and we'll go down the error handling route. The resume hits, it goes up and proceeds to the initial original route, and it will upload the file with the information that we found here. And you'll notice with this filter, only one bundle passed through. We found the file that matched the sender name and used that file to upload the file that was attached in the email. Now, it may seem like that is good to go and you've covered all your bases, but what happens if a different error happens, such as the sender name wasn't populated in the email? Well, if we run through that scenario here, and I go and select an email that does not have a sender name attached to it, then we're going to get a different error type. So here, if I run this, we'll get an error. It's going to go down to list the files, but it didn't find anything that matched because if you look into here, the error type was a validation error. And if you look into the sender details here, we don't have a sender name tied to that email. So from here, how do we handle this error? Well, with Make, you're able to do nested error handling depending on error type. So with this error handling route, we can add a router to make it so that we can have different types of error handling depending on the error that occurred. Now, I'm going to go ahead and save this. If you'll remember on the previous error that we had, it was the 409 conflict. So what we can do is we can copy this, go back into the diagram, and we can say that if the error message contains the path conflict folder, then that's what we want to do. We want it to list the folder and then filter and then resume. But if that isn't the case, we want to do something else. So if it's just one, we can set this as the fallback route and say any other error, let's go ahead and send a Slack message, and we'll send it to someone specifically so that they can come in and drill into what is going on. So we'll go ahead and select just sending a message to myself. And from here we can say, we can map in the type, the message, and maybe we'll want to bring in the scenario URL as well so that the user can drill right into that scenario. So now, if I go to run this, and I pick that email that does not have a sender name, something will still happen. So we'll be able to be notified that there's a different type of error that's occurring, and we can start to track it that way. So if I go ahead and run this, we'll now see that it's not going to go up the list all files path. It was a different error type, so I just received a Slack message with those details. Now to take this a couple steps further, if you'll remember from the previous lesson, there could be server errors that we might not be able to account for, where we might want to store incomplete executions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my scenario settings. I'm going to enable allowing of storing incomplete executions. In addition to that, I can also add an additional error handling route on my error handling route. So let's say on this list all files and subfolders in a folder, if we say run into some sort of server error or something like that, where we try to list it and all of a sudden Dropbox is no longer available, we can then add another error handler here and say we want to just take a break here and try it 3 times with 15 minutes in between, which should fix any sort of server error there. So I hope this was helpful, going through how you can nest error handling with different routes and filtering so that you can handle all different types of errors that are occurring within your scenario. The next lesson that we're going to go into is actually error logging. So when you're first building out these scenarios, you'll be able to set up some logging so that you can come back in and create these error handling routes depending on the errors that you're seeing within the scenarios.